A brand new roguelite game set in the Edo period of Japan is releasing next week. This game was actually pointed out to me thanks to the people over at Minimap, and I checked it out and played through all of the demo content, and I have to say, it is actually very enjoyable. When you throw a roguelite at me, I tend to be a bit worried due to how much content is in the game already, how does the roguelite aspects actually work, because it can differ from game to game, and also just how does the fighting feel, because since the fighting's the main part of the game, if it's kind of repetitive, I tend to get bored quite easily. This game didn't really have much of that issue. One of the cool things is this does seem to be pretty story heavy. Now, at the beginning of the game, you can select to play as one of 3 different people. You can pick between an immortal ninja, an Oni emissary, or a demon samurai. And each of these 3 people have different attack styles, different movements, and just overall feel pretty unique. So you can just mix it up. If one doesn't feel good, maybe try a different one, and you can hopefully find one that kind of meshes with your playstyle. And alongside your companion, which also, by the way, tells a completely different story since they're their own unique character with their own backstory, goals, and passions, you basically can play this game 3 times and have a completely different story experience. But take them, go through different rooms, and slash through hordes of enemies like any other roguelite. Every motion feels very fluid. No matter if you're using keyboard or mouse or a gaming controller, it feels pretty natural, and I really didn't have any issues trying to adapt to anything weird, so that was actually very nice. Some games I come in, the controls just seem very whack, and I have to spend 5 minutes readjusting the hotkeys, and didn't have to do that with this one. Now, like I said earlier, all of the characters have different kinds of attacks, and that also includes different weapons. One of them is a dual wielder, while one is a katana user, and the final one is actually a bow user. So these actually are quite different. Now, the gameplay does essentially just come down to hack and slash through a bunch of enemies. You will have the small enemies that die in about 3 hits, and then the larger leaders of these little hordes who might take a bit more time, and you might even have to go around, dodge some moves and stuff, but none of these little in-between stages, in-between boss fights, are very challenging. And I will say, one of the things that did get to me, and they get to me with every single roguelite game, is when you die, obviously, you get sent to the very first area again, you respawn, you go back out. Think games like Hades, except luckily you're not coming out of a pool of blood. But unlike games like Hades, to where there is generation of different rooms and maybe some different enemies to kind of spice up each run, there doesn't appear to be any of that in this game, which did make the gameplay of getting from area 0 to area with new boss in it very tedious feeling. I did feel like it was very repetitive, and I did start to feel that boredom kind of creeping in by the end. But I will say the bosses, when you get to the bosses in the demo, there's 3 bosses available. I went and defeated all 3 of them to complete the demo. They felt really good. All 3 of them had their own unique aspect. Their character design was very unique, and their attacks were all different. They had specialized attacks to go with the kind of creatures that they were. The difficulty seemed to escalate in a pretty normal fashion, and I did really like that. There was no major jump and challenge, and there was none to where it felt like this was just like fighting the hordes in the previous rooms instead of a boss. So I thought that that was a pretty solid concept and mechanic for it. And with each of these bosses, you do get a piece of story along with them. So this game does have that story that runs along with it and seems to be going side by side with the combat instead of just being primarily combat plus a little bit of story, or mainly story with just a little bit of combat. It does seem to have a pretty good balance of both. And like many other roguelites, there is a part in the middle of your campaign from boss to boss where you actually stop in a small village with different kind of merchants. Now, these merchants can sell anything from something to regain your HP that has been lost, to maybe get some buffs, and just a small plethora of things. I myself can't even really remember everything that I went through, so make sure to go and talk to every single one of the people there. Now, I have talked about the story a little bit, but because this is the demo and it seems to cut off pretty early on, we don't know a whole lot about the overall story that's going on. all that we can really tell, and I also got quite a bit of this information from the Steam page trying to do some digging into the game. There is some connection to the nine-tailed fox, and this connects to demons that we're fighting, spreading out over the world, and more of them seem to be appearing. But there does seem to be some kind of grand epic tale of overcoming evil and probably taking down this nine-tailed fox who seems to be working for the demons, or at least helping them come about and flood the earth. So I am kind of excited to see what kind of other bosses and storylines that they come up with in the full game. And it does seem to be maintaining a pretty water theme. We fight on beaches for a lot of the scenes, and 2 out of 3 of the bosses that we see could be considered sea creatures. And don't forget, like many other roguelites, there are power-ups that stay with you throughout each run. Now, every time you die, you respawn at this tree, and this tree is actually where you can get your permanent power increases or buffs. These range from being able to resurrect yourself the first time that you die, to maybe having some more stamina for dodging, or maybe even having more health entirely. Now beware, these do obviously cost a pretty penny, so make sure that you are managing your money that you find. This also goes for the merchant shops in the middle of the runs. Just keep an eye on your currency because this can be important. Overall, there wasn't a whole lot of content that I could really grab onto in this demo, but what I did seemed to be promising. I myself found the combat to be a bit repetitive by the end. I did play quite a few rounds of this to get to the final boss of the demo, and so I did end up having to fight those first sections of enemy hordes quite often. But hopefully if I get more buffs and maybe try out some new combos with different people, I tended to go with the katana wielder for the most part. Maybe I can find it more enjoyable, but if I do decide to go on and play the full release next week when it comes out, I think I will be more invested in the story overall than the combat. But I do think overall that this is a very interesting roguelite for those who like the Edo period of Japan and maybe want to get another story including the nine-tailed fox, which is a very popular character to have in games like these. This is another game. And to wrap things up, I think that people who really enjoy roguelites and really enjoy maybe some story-based stuff would enjoy this game. I would suggest playing the demo first, since there is a free demo to try out. I'm not sure how I would recommend this to people. I definitely wouldn't recommend this to people who aren't a huge fan of roguelites and be like, try this to get into the genre. I don't think this would be the game to go for that one. But overall, I think it's a solid game. I'm really actually excited to see this grand epic tale that I'm expecting from the full release. And I'm hoping to see a bit more from the gameplay loop and maybe unlocking some other features in the full title. I guess we'll just have to see. Question of the week. What is your favorite roguelite game? I think for mine it's probably going to end up being Hades, since I tend not to play a whole lot of them, but Hades is just really good. I need to get back to playing that. I never have beaten Hades, and I want to do that before Hades 2 comes out in full release. But that's going to be it for the video. Thank you for everyone who watched. I hope you got something out of this game. Let me know if you decided to go and download the demo. I would love to see who all I've swayed. I will leave a link to the demo, and I will put the actual link for the full game so that you can maybe wishlist it if you really like it. I'll leave that in the description, and I'll try and remember to put it in the pinned comment. But other than that, that's it. Thank you everyone who watched. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you really liked this video, give me a thumbs up to let me know I did a good job, and if you want to go the extra mile, give me a subscribe so you don't lose me in the sea of YouTube content, and I hope everyone has a lovely rest of their day. Bye guys.